Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi concludes visit to Laos PDR, attends East Asia Summit, says peace, security and stability of South China Sea is in the interest of entire Indo-Pacific region. India voices concern over Israeli fire on UN peacekeeper base in Lebanon. United Nations too condemns the act, calls it intolerable.
Obviously, I condemn the fact that there was shooting against the UN premise, wounding two peacekeepers.
And the Nobel Peace Prize for 2024 awarded to Japanese atomic bomb survivors group Nihon Hidankyo. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the 19th East Asia Summit in Vientiane, Laos. During his address, PM Modi extended condolences to the countries who have been impacted by Typhoon Yagi. PM Modi noted India's assistance in providing humanitarian aid through Operation Sadbhav. PM Modi emphasized on ASEAN unity and centrality. He reiterated India's interest in peace, security and stability of South China Sea. He called for free, open, inclusive and prosperous Indo-Pacific. PM Modi said that maritime activities should be conducted under UNCLOS. He noted that focus should be on development, not expansionism. He said India's support for ASEAN approach on the situation in Myanmar. PM said that countries of Global South are facing most negative impact of ongoing conflicts. He called for peace and stability to be restored as soon as possible. PM Modi said that this is not the era of war. He reiterated that problems cannot be solved on the battlefield. An Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Thongloun Sisoulith, General Secretary of the Central Committee of Lao People's Revolutionary Party and President of Laos PDR in Vientiane on Friday. Prime Minister congratulated President Sisoulith for successfully hosting the ASEAN Summit and the East Asia Summit. The two leaders discussed bilateral ties and reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthen the close partnership. They noted that India-Lao contemporary partnership was deeply rooted in age-old civilizational bonds. They expressed satisfaction at the ongoing collaboration between the two countries in the fields of development partnership, heritage restoration and cultural exchanges. Highlighting that 2024 marks a decade of India's Act East policy, Prime Minister noted its salience in adding further momentum to India's engagement with Laos. The two leaders also discussed regional and global issues of mutual interest. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also held bilateral talks with Prime Minister of Laos PDR Sonxay Siphandone in Vientiane. PM Modi congratulated Laos PM on successfully hosting the 21st ASEAN, India and 19th East Asia Summits. The two Prime Ministers held productive talks on further strengthening India-Laos civilizational and contemporary ties. They discussed various areas of bilateral cooperation such as development partnership, capacity building, disaster management, renewable energy, heritage restoration, economic ties, defense collaboration, among others. Prime Minister Siphandone thanked Prime Minister of India for India's flood relief assistance provided to Laos PDR in the aftermath of Typhoon Yagi. The two leaders noted that the ongoing restoration and conservation of Wat Phu, a UNESCO World Heritage Site under Indian assistance by the Archaeological Survey of India, imparts a special dimension to bilateral ties. PM Siphandone reaffirmed India's role on the international stage. India has strongly supported Laos PDR chairmanship of ASEAN for 2024. Following the talks, MOUs and agreements in the field of defence, broadcasting, customs cooperation and 3 quick impact projects under the Mekong-Ganga cooperation were exchanged in the presence of the 2 leaders. The QIPs relate to preservation of heritage of Lao Ramayana, restoration of Wat Phakya Buddhist temple with murals related to Ramayana, and support to shadow puppetry theatre on Ramayana in Champasak province. All 3 QIPs have a GOI grant assistance of about USD $50,000 each. India will also provide a grant assistance of about $1 million to improve nutrition security in Lao PDR. MOU was also signed on cooperation of broadcasting between Lao National Television, Ministry of Information Culture and Tourism of Lao PDR and Prasar Bharati of India. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met Prime Minister of Thailand Paetongtarn Shinawatra on the sidelines of East Asia Summit. This was the first meeting between the 2 Prime Ministers. PM Modi congratulated the Thai Prime Minister on assuming office. She also extended greetings to PM on his historic 3rd term in office. The 2 leaders discussed bilateral cooperation in a range of areas. They also exchanged views on ways to forge closer cooperation in sub-regional, regional and multilateral fora. In this context, they discussed strengthening regional cooperation through BIMSTEC. And on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met President of South Korea Yoon Suk-yeol on Friday. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken reaffirmed Washington's commitment to supporting ASEAN centrality during the ASEAN-US Summit on Friday. Blinken also reiterated the nation's stance on supporting freedom of navigation and overflight in the Indo-Pacific and stressed the importance of maintaining stability in the Taiwan Strait.
From the deepening crisis in Myanmar to the DPRK's destabilizing behavior, to Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, which continues to violate principles at the heart of the United Nations Charter and at the heart of ASEAN's Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. We remain concerned about China's increasingly dangerous and unlawful actions in the South and East China Seas, which have injured people and harmed vessels from ASEAN nations, and contradict commitments to peaceful resolution of disputes. The United States will continue to support freedom of navigation and freedom of overflight in the Indo-Pacific. We also believe it's important to maintain our shared commitment to protect stability across the Taiwan Strait. But whether it's responding to urgent global challenges or advancing the shared hopes of our people, the relationship between the United States and ASEAN will continue to be essential.
And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met US Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the sidelines of the East Asia Summit in Vientiane in Laos on Friday. PM Modi, who was on a 2-day visit to the Southeast Asian country, extended his condolences for the loss of lives due to Hurricane Milton in Florida, United States. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the first leader to be invited to address the East Asia Summit after the host and incoming chair. According to sources, India's role and importance in the ASEAN was also recognized. According to sources, Prime Minister Modi was also recognized as the only leader in the room who has participated in the most number of East Asia Summit, which is 9 out of 19 East Asia Summits. The East Asia Summit refers to the meeting of heads of states, governments of the East Asia Summit participating countries, which is convened annually. The East Asia Summit process was initiated in 2005 with the convening of first East Asia Summit in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. In his address, PM Modi said that India has always supported ASEAN unity and centrality. He noted that ASEAN is also at the center of India's Indo-Pacific vision and Quad cooperation. And on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Laos PDR, Ministry of External Affairs Secretary Jaideep Majumdar and ASEAN leaders have praised India's cooperation in many areas of diverse collaboration as a result of India's Act East policy, and also they have praised very positively India's leadership role in digital public infrastructure and the fact that ASEAN countries can benefit significantly from this.
ASEAN leaders and the Prime Minister reviewed our relations, the comprehensive relations that we have with ASEAN. ASEAN leaders especially very positively appraised our cooperation as in many areas of diverse collaboration as a result of India's Act East policy, and also they appraised very positively India's leadership role in digital public infrastructure and the fact that ASEAN countries can benefit significantly from this.
And PM Modi gifted exquisite items to world leaders during his two-day visit to Laos. Leaders of New Zealand, Japan, Laos PDR and Thailand were presented with unique articles studded with precious stones, silver work peacock figurine, an intricate wooden box and table, a vintage brass Buddha statue and a scarf. The gifts present are a symbol of Indian traditions and were crafted by skilled artisans of the country. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi enplaned for India from Laos after concluding his two-day visit to the Southeast Asian nation. He participated in the 21st ASEAN-India and the 19th East Asia Summits and held meetings with leaders from Laos, Thailand and New Zealand. He also met with other top leaders like South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and the newly elected Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. All right, still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Russian President Vladimir Putin meets Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Turkmenistan. And Navami festival celebrated across Nepal. Devotees throng goddess shrine. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the recent Israeli forces attack on a peacekeeper base in Lebanon, describing it as a violation of international humanitarian law. Israeli forces allegedly fired at a watchtower in UNIFIL headquarters in southern Lebanon, leaving 2 Indonesian peacekeepers injured. UNIFIL was created by Security Council in March 1978. The UN chief Guterres emphasized the widespread reaction from various parties in solidarity with the wounded peacekeepers, asserting that such incidents are intolerable and must not happen again.
Obviously, I condemn the fact that there was shooting against the UN premise, wounding 2 peacekeepers, which is a violation of international humanitarian law. Peacekeepers must be protected by all parties of the conflict, and what has happened is obviously condemnable.
Meanwhile, India's Ministry of External Affairs has expressed concern over the escalation of the conflict in West Asia after Israel struck UN peacekeeper base in Lebanon. In a statement, the MEA said that it is continuously monitoring the situation and is concerned the deteriorating security situation along the Blue Line. It stressed the need for respecting the inviolability of UN premises and appropriate measures shall be taken to ensure the safety of UN peacekeepers. And Hezbollah is reportedly gearing up for a prolonged conflict in southern Lebanon following significant losses, including the death of its leader Said Hassan Nasrallah. With a new military command now directing operations, the group is focusing on resisting Israeli forces that have crossed into Lebanon. Despite facing heavy Israeli airstrikes, Hezbollah is believed to still possess a substantial arsenal of weapons, including precision missiles that have yet to be deployed. As the situation unfolds, both allies and adversaries are closely monitoring Hezbollah's response to the ongoing Israeli offensive. And Russian President Vladimir Putin met Iranian counterpart Masoud Pezeshkian in Turkmenistan on Friday. Both leaders held face-to-face talks on the sidelines of an international conference and discussed growing economic ties between the two nations and shared views on world affairs. Iran's Pezeshkian accepted Putin's invitation to visit Russia. Russian and Iranian leaders attended a cultural forum in Turkmenistan. This is the first meeting between the two leaders since Iran fired missiles at Israel last week. Leaders of Central Asian countries are meeting to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the birth of Maktimguli Pireji, the 18th century poet and philosopher. And the Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to Nihon Hidankyo, a grassroots organization of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha. The Norwegian Nobel Committee praised the Hibakusha for their role in helping the world describe the indescribable, think the unthinkable, and somehow grasp the incomprehensible pain and suffering caused by nuclear weapons. Nihon Hidankyo has long been a voice advocating for the abolition of nuclear weapons and raising awareness of devastating consequences they bring.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Peace Prize for 2024 to the Japanese organization Nihon Hidankyo. This grassroots movement of atomic bomb survivors from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, also known as Hibakusha, is receiving the Peace Prize for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again.
And the French government presented its 2025 budget, which includes plans for €60 billion in spending cuts and tax increases for the wealthy and large corporations to address a growing fiscal deficit. Prime Minister Michel Barnier's administration is facing mounting pressure from financial markets and France's European Union partners to take decisive action as tax revenues have significantly underperformed this year while spending has surpassed projections.
L'économie française résiste.
The French economy is resisting. I've said it and I stand by it. But our public debt is colossal. Not seeing it, not saying it, not recognizing it would be both cynical and fatal. In 2024, this debt should be at 3.3 trillion euros, equivalent to 113% of the GDP.
Milliards d'euros, soit près de 113% du produit intérieur brut.
As France's new government presented its make or break 2025 budget bill that includes tax hikes and spending cuts on Thursday. Joining us with more on what's at stake is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu in Berlin. Chiponda, first of all, tell us what are the highlights?
Thanks for having me. Well, the French government is planning to cut government spending by 60.6 billion euros. And it also expects businesses and the wealthy to step up. They will have to pay higher taxes. France's Finance Minister Antoine Armand said that the EU's second biggest economy is in an unprecedented situation. Now, with its budget, the government aims to reduce the country's deficit to 5% of GDP by next year, from the 6.1% it is expected to reach in 2024. Now, that is, of course, a level not seen since 1945, with the exception of the 2008 financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. Last year, France had the EU's third highest debt-to-GDP ratio after Greece and Italy. France hasn't managed to keep its debt at the level mandated by the European Union at 3% of GDP.
Chiponda, also tell us what impact could the budget have?
Well, an independent public finances watchdog in France called the budget fragile and overly optimistic. And there are some concerns that the high taxes could hurt investments in the country. Now, the feeling is that it will do little to help France remain competitive globally, especially with Washington and Beijing offering more incentives and subsidies for companies investing in greener technologies. Now, this week, France's finance minister had said that lowering the deficit was a question of international credibility. So investors, and of course also France's voters, will be keeping a close eye on the French government to see how it navigates a budget that isn't just about the country's staggering deficit level, but also its political stability.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your inputs from Berlin. Now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The evolving economic situation in Kenya is motivating the youth to pursue arts, and local artists grabbing the opportunity to showcase their artworks. The surge in interest is attributed to a growing middle class with an appreciation for the arts as well as an influx of expatriates. Residents of the Mexican city of Chilpancingo took to streets demanding justice after the mayor of the city was murdered. Alejandro Arcos Catalan has assumed the position just last week and had taken a tough stand against crime in the city. A fresh round of protests erupted near the Martinique airport over the rising cost of living in France. Demonstrators clashed with police as new curfew measures were put in place to quell civil unrest. Flights were redirected to the neighboring French island of Guadeloupe to prevent further disruption. The appeal process is now open for the 37 death convicts for a failed coup attempt in Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa. Except one, rest of the convicts were found guilty of criminal association, attack and terrorism during the trial held last month. And crowds of devotees across Nepal are celebrating Navami of the Doordarshan festival on Friday, visiting various goddess shrines to pay homage and seek blessings from Navdurga. In Kathmandu Valley, temples such as Gujeshwari, Bhuvneshwari and Kalikasthan are bustling with worshippers. Similarly, devotees are flocking to sacred sites outside the valley, including Nala Bhagwati and Manakamna, offering prayers. And in sports, after securing comprehensive wins over Bangladesh in the first two T20Is, India looked to sweep the series clean in Hyderabad. India has displayed their dominance in the series by winning the first T20 comfortably by 7 wickets and second T20 by a good margin of 86 runs. The Surya Kumar Yadav-led side is expected to be unchanged for the final match of the series. On the other hand, Bangladesh would be looking to secure a consolation win after a poor performance in the T20I series as well as the Test series that preceded the T20 matches. And before we wrap up, as Durga Puja festivities reach its peak in different parts of the country, devotees all over the country throng to temples to seek blessings of Goddess Durga at temples and puja pandals. These are the visuals. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.